So the FS5 is one of the latest camera that Sony has been releasing. A lot of new great features on it. Probably one of the most really coolest things is that now with an external monitor, you can export 4K RAW. You could do up to 240 frames per second. As well as that, it does S-Log 2 and 3. They now record on SD cards, whereas the camera before this, FS7, you need those QXDs. A lot of other really great functions is that this has the built-in ND filters, as well as a variable ND. And what that is it has an LCD right in front of the sensor, which lets you dial in one stop at a time your ND. So now, in previous models, as you switch between NDs, it may be a little too harsh or it may not be enough. The variable NDs let you go one stop at a time, so you can really dial that in. This, for documentarians, this has face detect with, if you use our autofocus function, it can really track up 3 or 4 people, even more than that, as people are moving around in the frame. I know our documentary guys really like that. This now has a clear image zoom, which means that it'll double the length of any lens that you have. So and that's a virtual. It's basically a lossless image, and what's that doing? It's interpolating the pixels around the frame and generating a new image using the 4K sensor. And so let's say if you have a 100 millimeter lens, that's a 2.5. It is now a 200 millimeter lens, still at a 2.5. So you don't lose any light, you don't lose any image quality. It's pretty much just doubles anything you got. Now, when you shoot at 4K, it only goes 1.5 times that length, where anything under 4K, you're going to be doing twice that amount. It's in the camera, so you can use any lens for that. So I specifically like that for I shoot on a lot of Carl Zeiss primes, where if I have a 50 millimeter lens for like an interview or something, sometimes I want that shot slightly tighter, and instead of moving my camera or my things all around, I just use that function to punch in slightly. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages of this camera is the clear image zoom that lets you punch in. Another cool thing is this is an E-mount, so you can use all your Sony glass, all of your Alpha glass, your G series. You can use Nikons, and then if you get a Rokinon, if you get a Metabones adapter, you can put all of your Carl Zeiss as well as your Canon glass on this. And for the broadcast folks, if you wanted to go put some broadcast lenses, you would just use the same E-mount, and Able Cine makes a great third-party adapter which would go E-mount to a B4, and now you can put any broadcast lens. So essentially, you can put any lens on this camera. The FS7, now I actually own 2 of those. Me and my buddies bought those last year. There's a lot of differences. Pretty much this camera does a lot better slow motion. It doubles the slow motion. We now go 240 frames at 8 seconds. For super slow-mo, if you're going 4K RAW, it's going to do 120 frames at a 4-second, and that's a start, center, and trigger, where the FS7 didn't even do that in 4K RAW. And what's really cool about that as well is that, like I was saying, if you go to an external recorder, you can do all 4K RAW. That's an update on firmware that's coming out in the summer. Compare this to the FS7, comparing it to that. They both have ND filters, but the FS7 does not have the variable NDs. It does not have the clear image zoom that doubles your focal length. This camera's about 2 pounds, it's a little less than 2 pounds, 0.8 kilograms. And so it's a lot lighter than that camera. It's a lot cheaper. This retails for about $61 with the kit lens, with the kit. Without the kit, which is basically without the lens, you're looking at about $55, $56. Price-wise and weight and all the new functions of it, that's definitely the big brother, whereas it's almost as if they took that technology, put it into a more ergonomic camera that you can use for the same applications.